Oh my goodness, this is so exciting to see all of the faces. I sometimes see the names, um, but not the faces. And this is very enriching. Sorry, I'm trying to get my screen set up. Page after page, a beautiful face comes up. And you can see that I'm in a bit of a different space today than you might have ordinarily seen me in. This is my the little cabin that I've been blessed to enjoy during our retreat last week. Since we have a guest in our home that is in my usual space, um, so I'm at the retreat center, the Hui Hualana, the living sanctuary where I've taught for the last 22 years in the middle of a beautiful restored natural landscape. So it's quite nice. So I'm thrilled to see your faces. Let's enjoy our um, sitting time. Others may be joining us as we do. So we will begin now with the bell. And if you would join me for the verse of the robe. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Goodness, I really get the feeling of the vastness when I can see so many faces and so many names, page after page. Scroll through and just look at all of the beautiful faces from all over the world, really. All these people that I've known and practiced with and continue to love and connect with. And it's really quite inspiring and humbling, very humbling, that these 80 people have shown up in this way. And I hope that it was okay that I did not mute my microphones so that you could hear the birds in the background. Could you hear them? Some of you? The birds are lovely, so I thought I would just let them continue to teach while we were sitting. We were able to do that one day during the retreat, and it seemed to be a worthwhile activity. I think maybe one of the reasons why it's so touching today, in addition to seeing everyone, is to be returning. Since I haven't offered myself in this way for the last couple of weeks, although I've been involved in the intensive. So it's lovely to be back, and I'm used to fantasizing your faces when I'm speaking because I don't see them, and now I can actually see you. I can look into the screen and see a few of these faces. I was speaking to my sister on the phone a couple of days ago as we were checking in and doing our usual activities and care for each other and care for our mom. And I asked her at the end of the conversation, because she was saying that she missed Mchroy. And I said, well, I'm looking forward to, what should I talk about? What would you like me to speak on? And she said, well, let me think about that. And she wrote back very quickly because she was on a walk with a number of her friends, and they were involved in doing some rituals outside in the forest where they had room. And part of her text said, the question is, we want to reclaim our lives after the last year we've all lived through. Something about how do we reclaim our lives. And it came at a time when I just received an email from the Open Door Sangha in Madison, just beginning to talk about what we might focus on for the spring retreat there at the end of April. And one sentence from that email said, as we move globally toward a post-pandemic world with so many questions, we want to consider what the Dharma teaches in terms of our human capacity for contributing to ending suffering as we embrace the uncertainties of what's to come. This is a little larger version of the same kind of question. What's coming? And how do we meet it? And how does our practice support us, assist us? How does it guide us? in this way. And I thought of a number of things because the question initially came from Kathy, at least in the way that questions normally come in inquiry. How do I, or how should I, or what do I, the question of some instrumental activity, which is not exactly what practice offers, but it's nevertheless the thing that we as humans want to know. And it reminds me of a key kind of a turning point between psychosocial problem solving, which is crucial and necessary, and what's behind or underpins all of that, which is our spiritual practice, and how they're pointed in a little bit different directions, but they interweave, of course. And that's the phrase that some of you have heard me use many times, which is that practice, spiritual practice, Buddhist practice, Zen practice, will not necessarily offer you new and better experiences. What it offers is a new relationship with all experience. Our practice offers us a new way to relate to whatever experience we're having, not new, better experiences. If I practice, everything will turn out okay. No, if I practice deeply, everything will go like it goes. How am I going to relate to that? It's going to offer you a new relationship with all experiences. So it's a little bit different. But the reclaiming that was in that first request, how are we going to reclaim our lives? Of course, it's a really great question. But I think it opens us to a whole list of what I ended up, maybe it's a little cute, but it was kind of interesting, a whole bunch of R words, and you don't have to remember them. It's just as I began to think about it, like what's coming and what are we going to reclaim? I thought, well, there's the reclaiming. What do you want to call back? Like a hug, connecting. And then there's not only reclaiming, but what are you relinquishing? What do we have to let go of? Some things for good. They're not going to come back. What are we going to have to reinterpret? And it goes on and on. I'm not going to go through them, but what are we going to have to relearn? What's going to be restored? What do we have to revise or reinvent? What is it that we actually retain? And then there are the functions of meeting all our reluctance. How many of you are reluctant in some ways to go back, to give up? And what are we rehearsing as we get ready? And what's going to be reawakened? And you could go on and on. There's a whole series of things we could practice with. Not just reclaiming, relinquishing, reinterpreting, relearning, restoring, on and on. But there's another, I think, deep kind of question or reflection in all of this. And it's the question about practice in general, of course, is why do we have to attend all this as we think about what's coming? But somewhere in the world right now, a lot of places, another child and another child and another child is being born, who's going to ask us later about things that we don't even have the answer to yet. But we're going to have some response to account for our time on the earth. And through this pandemic and our negotiation of politics and cultural pain around things like racism, and let alone the planet that we're going to have them inherit. These kids are being born or coming into their own, and we're going to have to answer. And this is what awakening is designed to do. to give us a way to come forward and meet the life we have now, and to prepare the life that's to come, and to understand the life that preceded us, hopefully, for the good. So when we ask this question, like what's coming and how are we going to meet it, there are, it's like what's on the horizon. When I'm sitting here, I happen to be looking out towards a beautiful valley, and then I can see the coast. As I'm looking over the screen, you can tell, and the ocean, and another island, I can see Lanai, and then the horizon. And I know that the horizon isn't an actual thing. I spoke about this in the retreat this week. It's an illusion, as if the sky and the ocean come together and there's a line. But if I moved a few miles down, it would move. What's on the horizon? What's on that edge and out in front of us? And I'm going to back up a second, because the Buddhist Peacemaker Order gives us 3 tenets for having to meet these things. It says, if we're going to practice well, if we're going to orient ourselves well, then we can think about 3 things that they're like guiding us. They're like GPS. Start with beginner's mind, or not knowing. As we face what's happening post-pandemic, like we don't really know. And every time we think we know, we limit what's possible. So start with opening to beginner's mind, not stupidity, not ignorance, just openness, so that we can do number 2, which is bear witness very deeply. Pay attention. Pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. And pay attention not as best we can, not so much through the filters of our preferences and our fears. Those will come, and we'll pay attention to that, as well as information we're getting, watching how our relationships unfold, what seems to be wholesome. So open to beginner's mind, not knowing, bear witness, pay close attention, and then compassionate action can come from that. Those 3 tenets are essential as we ask this question, what's coming and how should we meet it? Beginner's mind, not knowing, bearing witness, paying attention, and then compassionate action. In our practice, we began to, hopefully, as we wake up to what practice offers us, we began to experience our interconnection and interpenetrating relationships with everything, with all beings, with all being, with the earth. In fact, it's interesting how the coronavirus has reminded us that we're all connected. That if we, human beings, are the host to something, there's no place it doesn't go. There's no person it doesn't touch. And in this case, because it's dangerous, we attempt to limit that, but we limit it because we know we're interconnected, because there's no separation. And so our understanding of our interconnection and interpenetrating relationships is the foundation, actually, for the greatest peace and healing, real joy, moments of happiness. We realize this interconnection. And then we have the challenges that come, our shared challenges of how to be in the world. And those things take on, even the ordinary things every day, take on much more meaning. It's much more fulfilling when we feel this universal connection with the totality of everything. Just like there are times when we all come together for a common cause. Even ordinary difficult things have a buoyancy and a vibrancy and an inspiration because we're doing something together that has meaning. We're all in this together. And so our practice helps us wake up to the actualization, the expression, the living of this full presence of the moment, whatever's coming. Whatever's coming. I was reminded recently, someone brought this quote, which I'd heard many times, and some of you have, where Suzuki Roshi said, strictly speaking, there are no enlightened people. There's only enlightened activity. It's our shared activity that expresses our awakening. And then he said, what we're speaking of is moment-to-moment enlightenment, one enlightenment after another. And I reframed his beautiful statement because I'm a little funny about the word enlightenment. I put awakening because it includes maybe even the shadowy sides of things. So if you say, strictly speaking, there are no people who are awake, there are only people engaged in wakeful activity, awakened behaviors. So what we're speaking of is moment-to-moment awakening. Don't you feel that? Like you kind of wake up a little and you go back to sleep, you wake up, you go back to sleep. It's not constant. One moment of awakening after another. If we allow ourselves to be intimate with beginner's mind and bearing witness, intimate with all things, like I've spoken about, which guides us to some compassionate action. That's an appropriate response. What in our previous retreat I was just talking about is appreciating everything fully and contributing back. So we become more virtuosos, an improvisational way of appreciating and contributing, meeting each situation without too much obstruction. So as we let go of the kind of tightness and rigidity and narrowness of attention, and that tightness and rigidity and narrowness comes from our habits, what you're fearful of, what you want to protect, all that. And our practice helps us begin to open and soften, to be as clear as possible and as boundless as possible, so that our practice helps us realize more intimacy and appreciation of each thing. And it calls us forward to this contribution of generosity and more appropriate response. And this is what awakening looks like with real people as we face what's to come. And I think it's worth just mentioning these three horizons, these three boundaries, these three elements that I've spoken about many times and did recently in this retreat, of relevance, responsibility, and readiness. I have more R words for you. Since an horizon is a fiction, it's an apparent illusion, one of the apparent illusions that we live with is the horizon for relevance. What's relevant to me and what's not relevant to me. But when we begin to understand our interdependence and our interpenetrating relationships, we realize everything's relevant. It's not like a good idea to wear a mask here and not there. It's always a good idea. It's always relevant. So relinquishing our horizons for relevance erases these boundaries, and it changes the meaning of things and our customary relationships with them. It frees things up to actually mean more than they have ever meant before. And it deepens our partnership and intimacy with everything. When we realize, oh, everything is relevant, everything is worth paying attention to, everything makes an impact. And when we compassionately refuse to turn away from things and people and silence things and people, when we compassionately refuse to turn away or to silence, and refuse to pick and choose experiences according to just our self-centered likes and dislikes, the world opens up in a very different way when we relinquish this horizon for relevance. It naturally opens the next one, which is for responsibility. If everything is interdependent, that means everything is meaningfully related, which I've just been talking about. Everything's in constant relationship with our own hearts and minds. So there's this sometimes kind of like a silent bond that we begin to realize we're all one family. I was just reading something the other day from the Hindu Upanishads, and I love this image. It said, there's a passage that speaks of how those who become wise lose their name to the, in capital, the great oneness, the way rivers lose their names when they flow into the sea. Isn't that a great image? It's this transformation from the solitary to the communal. And there's a mysterious kind of physics that each generation has to, and we're doing now, having to relearn regarding what's possible when we work together. Time and again, generation after generation, we're asked to discover through love and through suffering that at the heart we're the same. So this is responsibility. It's all up to us, and we're all in it together. Everything is relevant, and we have a responsibility to the whole. The third horizon is for readiness. What are you ready for? Are you ready for this thing to end? What does it mean to end? If we hold back and constrict ourselves because we're frightened of the world and frightened of things, and I mean unnecessarily constricted, that as we relinquish our readiness and we feel our willingness and our aspiration to move forward for the benefit of all beings, then that frees up a bunch of energy that we were holding. And so we offer back and yield up all this energy that we'd bound up in our habitual maintenance of our individual self and the idea about other people and our likes and dislikes. There are things, you can feel it as political things changes. There's ease and there's contraction. We bind up these energies. And the release of this energy, we're ready to realize that we can utilize. And that's the place of awakening. And letting go of our restrictions or horizons for readiness kind of opens up for realization. We're ready for things. We can be responsible for things. Everything is relevant. So we're relinquishing our horizons for awakening. And this goal or path we set up for ourselves can be, it can be blocked by circumstances, and we've felt that very, very much during this pandemic. But, nothing can stop us from facing in the proper direction, even if we're blocked by circumstances. And this is what practice does. It doesn't fix all the problems. It doesn't help us leap over every element. It says, if we're not too caught up, we can keep facing in the same direction together. And that's our practice. It's not a prescription for precisely what to do, because you have to be improvisational, or how to solve the unending problems that occur. You have to have some virtuosity in that. But by continually relinquishing, as they arise, all of these horizons for relevance and responsibility and readiness, then we live like bodhisattvas. We demonstrate our unlimited human willingness and skill for creating new and truly liberating relationships with everyone and everything. And only by doing so do we help ourselves move into a position of experiencing the kind of resistance of things and ourselves and each other to awakening. What's in the way? What are the barriers? And letting go of our fixed views and softening the ways we cling to these apparent horizons, then we find ourselves moving naturally in the direction of expressing, appreciating and contributing, appreciating and contributing, receiving what comes, responding with care. We don't know what's going to come, but we have to pay attention and then respond with care, with an open beginner's mind and bearing witness, and then see what comes up. Because after all, what we're describing is actually our Buddha nature expressing itself. That's our Buddha nature expressing itself. So I would assume probably that these are the same sorts of things that some sort of questions that you've been asking, and hopefully this helps you think about or reflect on what it's like to not necessarily solve problems and get a new solution, but help us stay in a direction, a wholehearted direction, and to revise our meaning of things and have a new relationship with experience, not just like a new, better, I've got it solved resolution of things. I wish I could offer that, but I can't. That's not what practice offers us. So if there's some of the things that have come up that you think you'd like to address regarding this, please do. And as you see all these many, many faces and all these beautiful people all over the world, I'd love to hear from some of you, especially people who haven't come forward before. Take a chance, relinquish your horizon for readiness, relevance, responsibility. Just come up and visit a bit. We'll see what happens. And you can raise your hand. You can click the little hand raising thing, and then Jessica or Kim will notice who's there and will connect us, Zoom us together.
I see Toni's hand raised.
Yeah, I think if you look down at the little smiley face with the plus, it says reactions down on the bottom of your screen or somewhere on your screen. There's a place where you can raise your hand, and then they'll notice who you are. And it looks like Toni is up front.
Good to see you. Good to see
Hi,
everyone.
Toni. You don't have your
Yeah.
cap on.
I know, I know, I know. I'm
You look
I'm
great.
I'm I'm taking a chance or what I'm meeting.
Naked, no cap.
Oh gosh. Well, so much of what you're saying is resonating with me really a lot right now. Because I just found out yesterday I have an incredible opportunity. It's beyond a job, it's an opportunity. It's kind of like a mission, and I've
Wow.
been yeah, I've been really nervous about taking it, and and even trying for it and saying maybe there's someone better, but I pushed, and I just a lot of this idea of just showing up, just showing up, and that's all I'm gonna go with, as I move toward it. But
Well, you mentioned
it's
that this,
special.
this is on the horizon, that you might have this opportunity, and sure enough, it's come through, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's come
And
through.
now, oops, you got what you asked for.
I know, I know. I, yeah, it's scary. It's a little bit scary. And
What brings
yeah,
you forward today as you announce this?
gratitude, real gratitude for
Ah,
this group, because I found you back in like August, I think, and started coming again, and
Mm.
just reminding me of I'm not so damaged. I'm not so bad. I can show up, and I'm just one of among all of us.
And as you say that, it looks like it's touching in some way.
It's very touching. Yeah,
Look
yeah,
at the faces. Can you see a bunch of faces?
yeah.
So, I'm gonna make a question, but you say it. They'll hear me say it, but don't worry about that. You say the question I'm gonna ask and see what happens when you just look on the screen, okay?
Okay.
Here's the question I want you to ask.
Okay.
Are, are all you guys behind me in this?
Okay. Are all you guys behind me in this? Oh, good.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Even
I
though
know.
you know what's gonna happen and you know the question, but it matters, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's wonderful to kind of take the reins of my life, and not just float down the river. And I mean, I'm doing that too, but it's nice to try and to reach and to
Well, it's one of the foundations actually of practice, which is a firm decision that I will take care of myself and be responsible for my life no matter what happens. No matter what the circumstances, I will be responsible for my life and I'll take care of my life.
right, 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 right. And I can let that go at times. And it's been great to bring it back, because I think with all we've all gone through, it's easy to just disintegrate into despair, you know.
That's part of the reclaiming. That's one of the words to reclaim and to restore and to remember.
Yes, yes.
So here we are. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Let us know how it goes.
I'll keep you up to date.
Good. Thanks, Tony.
I see Shad's hand up next.
Well, Shad, we have to unmute her. There we go. It's so good to see you.
Well, it's wonderful to see so many people.
I know.
Just
It makes a
it's
difference,
kind
doesn't
of
it?
like I thought this was going to be a webinar, so I must admit I didn't think I was going to have to take part. I thought I could just sort of be here and be an audience, but your talk, of course, it's touched me like everything you say always touches me. And when you started off with saying, what are we going to reclaim and what do we have to let go of and what are we going to relinquish? What are we going to revise, retain, etc., etc., etc. I'm kind of thinking, oh, there's a lot of work here. Oh, right, there's a lot to do. And then suddenly it kind of came to me. It's nothing's going to change. Nothing is going to be retained. Nothing's going to be let go of, nothing's going to be relinquished because everything still continues.
That's right. It's life as it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just life as it is.
Absolutely. It's
We have
just
stories.
life. Yeah. And it's also extremely good to have a reminder to keep coming back to beginner's mind, to keep paying attention, and to keep on keeping on with one compassionate action after another
As best we can, stumbling along.
as best we can. So I kind of went round in this delightful loop. There's this lovely circle,
hmm
sometimes done with a great big brush, and that's it.
Well, I'm going to ask, are you at home there on Everton Road?
Yes.
Do you see Gwen ever?
Every morning we've been walking her dog, new
Would,
dog.
I know I haven't seen it. So I know this is personal, but would you give Gwen my love?
Of course,
So then
absolutely.
you can enact some of this, okay?
Yes, totally.
Hmm. Good.
Yeah. And
Thank you,
she,
Chad.
but she's always speaking of the walks that you've had in the Pennines and the places she's taken you.
Oh,
So she loves to hear about you. So,
you're going to make me cry now, so okay.
uh, well, we can all we can all be interconnected in that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye. And Shad lives down the street and is a good practitioner in our Sangha there in Sheffield. And Gwen is the person that I've stayed with in her sort of home B&B for God, 15 years, more, I don't know, almost 20 years it seems. Hello, Bets.
Hi, how are you? How is everybody?
They're all there, waiting for you.
That's so good to be here. I have my window cracked. We have a beautiful day here in the Northeast, which has been so bitterly cold recently.
Yeah, yeah. Where are you exactly?
Pound Ridge, New York,
Okay.
40 miles outside of the city, but a very, 5-acre zoning. So very, um,
Hmm.
I don't like using the word isolated because for me,
You have space.
I'm in the middle of nature. Yeah.
Good.
And hearing the birds and knowing that you're at the Hui and hearing the birds outside my window, I just got this wonderful feeling of everything being all in one circle. It was just so sweet.
And seeing the faces helps that too, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
Mhm.
But, I love today's inquiry. It's really shifted, my my recent pattern of thought, which is everybody is feeling the pandemic blues. Everybody is, looking at things changing. Everyone's kind of hitting a wall, and the changes to their personality as a result of either isolation or rules or no paycheck or whatever are really at full blown. And I've had a lot of compassion for the people who are being pulled down by it.
Mhm.
And this just gave me such a different focus to a shift in thinking. What is it that I'm taking from this? You know, um,
Well,
besides
that's actually what practice does. It just shifts our perspective.
just
Life goes on.
what what have I learned this year? I came into this as the pandemic being the greatest gift in the world because I was a person who would run around with my pants on fire saying, "Stop the world, I want to get off." Oh, the
And it
world,
did.
and I got off. But I've just had so much opportunity for reflection and compassion and discovery. And now what do I do with that? How do I bring that forward?
Mhm.
What do I How do I continue that as the calamity of the noise and sound and everything starts back in again?
That's exactly. If you feel like there are things that you want to make sure you don't lose,
Yeah,
then it's important to pay attention to those.
yeah,
What have you learned and what can you carry forward? What's the gift?
yeah. How do I learn to maintain? Yeah.
Mhm.
So thank you so much,
Absolutely. It's good to hear from you.
everyone.
Yes. And by the way, if you all of you, if you put your Zoom on speaker view, you'll see me and the person I'm talking to kind of highlighted. You see some of the other faces, but it'll give you a more intimate view as we speak, if you'd like to do that. So just change the speaker view.
I saw Ed's hand next, so I'm going to spotlight Ed next.
Quickly
Good.
unmute. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Have we
All
met
coming
before?
together. In this context, a few times, but not in person in Austin.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Um, I don't know specifically how to relate this to today's teaching, but your teachings have been very helpful to me this last week. On Thursday, I was accused of malfeasance, and I had these inner demons saying, "Oh my gosh, how do I prove myself innocent? And who would have the audacity to, question my squeaky clean reputation?" And got to observe that. That was handy. Then the quick list of all my malfeasances that I already knew about swept into the space. And the next 2 days, the same person that said, "Aren't you out of bounds in this area?" And I said, "No, I clearly am not. And that's okay that somebody accused me." Said, urgent, I need your help. Do this thing. And so in 30 seconds, I make a fix. And then I'm accused of doing the wrong thing based on the communication not being clear. And it goes this way for about 3 days before I suddenly realize it's not just me in this communication. There is someone else that is frightened and reactive. But my pleasing side immediately assumed that any authority or any other was all reality, and I was going to react to all reality with my best effort to make things right. 3 days into it, this picture came back of the most courageous consideration I've seen was on January 6th, when you simply brought yourself, and that was enough. And any more was hard to find in the moment. And that came back to me that if I didn't demand of myself to be more than myself in any of these moments, the knots in the tapestry and the confusion, miscommunication could possibly untangle.
Not adding more.
Instead of adding more, trying to straighten it out, trying to fix it. And I really appreciate that this practice of mostly simply breathing, sitting twice a day, and hearing one another's experience through the lens of this teaching. It's enough. It's enough in any particular moment.
And you know why you've heard me say that in instruction that I often give is how simple are you willing to let this be? That relinquishment isn't giving up a bunch of stuff. It's just realizing it all goes away if we stop stirring.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to see you, Ed, and thank you. I hope things go well. I like your signal in the back there. It says remember. Hello, John.
I didn't realize I'd be up so quick. I've been chewing on a protein bar.
Oh.
So just chewing a little bit. That's what that's about.
Nourishing yourself.
I'm one of those people who I don't want to go back. I want to stay here in my condo by myself. I'm being an introvert. I like that a lot.
You can do that. You can stay in your condo.
Yeah, and I've done that for stayed at home most of the time. On the other hand, as a single guy, I want to date, and
you also might want to be with those grandkids behind you.
Yes. Yeah, in fact, I'm lucky in that way because my son, who's their father, has us all get on Zoom once a week so he can see the family that's up in Minnesota, among other family members. Yeah. So about wanting to date, I'm in a meetup group. We have a meeting every other week, and we call it Dating at Our Age. And so we share perspectives on that. And one thing that a lot of the women have mentioned is it bothers them that men aren't willing to be vulnerable. So they provided a link to a 20-minute TED Talk, somebody who's an expert in this, a social worker, PhD in social work. And she ended up saying that vulnerability is a willingness to be seen. So it seems to me that that is part of what we're talking about here as we come back and make connections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a willingness to be seen and the willingness to see,
Okay.
to look deeply and really see what's going on. That's the bearing witness. But the other side of it is the willingness to be seen, which is the intimacy that we're talking about. And so intimacy is the foundation of our practice in a way. And another word for awakening, really, intimacy, in which we can appreciate the world and offer ourselves back and forth. And sometimes that shows up in human relationships, like you're talking about. And we get to choose how those things go. You can be introverted and be wholehearted and loving and caring, and you can be extroverted. It just shows up differently, that's all. It's just a different song, different verse of the same song, maybe.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Clayton.
Hi, Flint. It's good to see y'all, everyone. It's amazing. I really like this new format. I just what you said about rivers lose their names as they flow into the sea was really beautiful. And it made me, I'm just so grateful because as I step back into life and think about what I want to retain, I realized that I had a period there where who I thought I was fell apart pretty significantly during all this.
Mm-hmm.
And because of physical and mental breakdowns because of my 6-month COVID battle. And now it's picking up pace and I'm busy and I feel strong again. And I feel a very big ego taking over again. And I've forgotten what it was like to have things kind of dissolve a little bit. So I'm happy. I feel great. I wouldn't want to go back to the way I felt before. I just don't want to, I don't want to lose some of what I experienced. And I'm not exactly sure how to not let my big, strong ego step in again.
Well, you're doing the first thing, which is you're noticing that it's happening. And you're telling a universal, consistent story about practice. That the freedom that we're seeking isn't the establishment of some new solid identity. It's the relinquishment and letting go of almost all identities so that we're free. This, I remember having lunch one day, I think we were at Z Tejas in Austin, with a friend of mine a very, very, very dear friend, long-time friend who had kidney cancer. And at the time we were having lunch, it was like a year or two following his diagnosis and surgery. And he said, when he was diagnosed and had his surgery, he was suddenly catapulted into a spacious, tender, open-hearted, beautiful place. Yes, there's fear. Yes, there was all the things that happen. But it was so startlingly freeing. And he found himself in a place that he'd actually longed for. And over the ensuing 2 years, as he had healed and started to put himself back together in his ordinary way, he felt a deep grief of what he was missing as he came back to what people would normally consider healthy and happy and reestablished. Because all the habit patterns came back and the identities. And it's not a different story than the one you're telling. And so we talked about how practice is precisely.
Oh, ow, ow.
Is that Harry? Practice is precisely the intentional release of those things that sometimes tragedies or difficulties or challenges disassemble, and gives us a glimpse of what it's like to be free. And hopefully we don't have to have a terrible illness or something to do that. But it does show us what's possible. I mean, my whole entry into this came because I worked with cancer patients for years, and they started showing me what this was. And I was young, and I wanted to know about that. It was the same time when AIDS came on the scene, and people my age started to die, and there was a whole different perspective. What if you can't hold on to anything? And I realized, oh, there's this thing about impermanence and interdependence and dukkha, and the beautiful joy and freedom that can come by following that path to a place of freedom, not to a path of despair. So I'm not saying anything you haven't heard a million times, but we need to hear it a million times. Because like Harry, when we're saying, ow, oh no, what's going to be on the other side,
Yes. And I do need to hear it a million times. And I do want to make sure I don't lose some of those kind of really sweet moments where I was pissed off that I was getting jostled along and losing my name.
Yes.
But I was, I don't want to lose that experience totally. And I'm not really sure how to hold on to it, but.
Well, once, listening to the birds, there's a Mary Oliver poem called Such Singing in the Wild Branches, which I read during the retreat as we were listening to the Shama thrush. And there's a line that says, one thing that wise people say is that once you've been there, you're there forever. It's a line from that poem.
Pretty.
So you haven't lost it, but you may forget it. And that's all that practice is about, is remembering. That's what sati, the word we translate as mindfulness, means. Remembering.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. And I see that we're at the end of our time. I know Efrat had her hand up. Oh, right there at the end. We'll have another chance, I hope. But we have to respect our time. And we'll repeat the 4 practice principles, which are precisely all these teachings are reflecting today. So I hope you'll enjoy doing that with me just for a moment. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Another added benefit of this is I get to see your mouths moving, so I know that you're chanting with me. That's really lovely. So I think Jessica or Kim might come on with a little reminder. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Flint. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Appamada's programs are supported by your generosity, and everything that you do makes such a difference. You can make a contribution on the website at appamada.org. We're also wanting to make an announcement, so I'm just going to read this really quickly. We are dedicating the month of March to an inquiry into how Appamada can best support you in this endeavor. Please, this endeavor meaning your life of practice. Please take a moment to consider what would support your practice at this time, and let us know what that is by going to the lowest left-hand corner on every page of the Appamata website and click on Contact Us to enter your practice needs. So basically, you'll just get a little form under the contact button, and in the form field, you can place your thoughts on what you might need and how Appamata can best support you in your practice. In the subject, you might put something like Appamata support or something like that. And we'll be collecting these responses throughout all of March. So please feel free to go onto the website and look at the bottom left of any single page and look for that Contact Us link.